Hi, welcome back, good looking. This is the first video of the year that I'm going to be duping a palette, I think. Well, we did the Mercury retrograde, but that actually was done in 2021, but I released it in 2022. I'm Kendra Morgan Official. I like to put out content around single eyeshadows, makeup brushes, sunscreen. So if you like that kind of content, be sure to subscribe. And let's get started. Today, we have been sneak peeked the new Natasha Denona Pastel Palette. And I have a few words, but before that, I do want to go into just like, not this particular look that I put on my face today, but I want to show you guys a look that I just put together and I thought did not go very well with the palette at all, or with the idea that, you know, this would be for the general consumer and why. And then I also want to go into the eyeshadows that I selected from my collection to dupe the vibes of this. Duping the vibes for me is using the single eyeshadows that I own in my collection to find and feel out the vibes of these palettes. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let's go ahead and get started with the swatches. Okay, here is the palette in all its glory. The first shadow that I'm duping is Mango Tango by Makeup Geek. You guys will have to forgive me a little bit because the Natasha Denona palette was leaked and I don't believe I got all of the shade names from it before it was taken down. So then Prism is the next shade. It's that duochrome vibey shadow. I was told that there were 5 duochrome shadows found in this palette, so this is a very fitting shadow. It is a white base duochrome with a pink to yellow shift, I think is what I ended up trying to get for this. The Natasha Denona swatches that I was able to go off of didn't really give any indicators of heavy, harsh, super shiny, sparkly duochromes. So that's why I ended up going with a duochrome from Makeup Geek, because I feel like those kind of match the essence and kind of the vibe that Natasha Denona goes for. The next shadow is, I know this one is supposed to dupe the shade Mint, and I use Sydney Grace's Mint Green. Oh wait, it's supposed to dupe Mint Frost. Does a really good job. At the end, I will go ahead and show you guys a comparison of Mint Frost and Lemoncello, because I do actually own those in Natasha Denona's shade. The next shadow in my selection is duping out that purple shade. Curfew is from Makeup Geek. That's what I used. This is a matte, very dry formula matte, so I am building up the color and pigmentation in swatch, and you can see here it's a very velvety, warm purple. Again, another duochrome that I chose for the last shade in the first row, and it is Smooches by Looxi Beauty. You can no longer buy this, is my understanding, but it's what I have in my collection. And this was actually one of the hardest ones for me to dupe out because I didn't know if I carried out the mauve enough. I think it leans more peachy pink, if you ask me. But there you have it. That's what I chose for my palettes dupe. I didn't actually get a really good look at the swatches. Again, I'm doing all of this from the sneak peek. I'm not actually going off of Natasha Denona's website or anything like that. So I'm trying to get you guys the duochrome shift here, see if I can get that kind of illuminated from the bottom so you guys can see that there's like a purple shift and a somewhat like a pink orange base. So the first shade on the second row is by Sydney Grace, and it is Seafoam. Sydney Grace's formula most closely resembles the velvet formula in the Natasha Denona. All 5 of these matte shades are cream to powder, so I did try to go up in contrast with the shade whenever possible. This one, however, looks probably true to the pan the most. Next is Megalodon by Sydney Grace, and that's going to dupe the next shade in the second row. I know that in the Natasha Denona palette it is a duochrome. This is not a duochrome. This is just a straight metallic, but it's a very, very beautiful aqua teal. It doesn't lean too blue and it doesn't lean too green. I think it's almost like perfect smack dab in the middle for this. Then the next shade is also by Sydney Grace, and it's called Lucky Peach. This is, however, a duochrome, and I think it really fits the bill pretty good. It's a pink with a gold shift over the top. And it's really beautiful, and it also really fits the palette's vibe as well. I used Makeup Geek's Bellini. That's tried and true. It is just a very peachy orange matte, but it's very light in color. But when swatched, it is actually quite a bit darker in hue and saturation, so I kind of feel like it gives off the vibes of the cream to powder formula, which would be in the Natasha Denona palette. So I think that's really pretty, and it does give off a very pastel vibe. Now, this is where I up the ante and increase the saturation with Sydney Grace's Nightfall, so that it gives off a tone that kind of mimics the cream to powder, maybe translating a little bit darker once blended in and kind of blends out a little bit lighter, but also would be a color that wouldn't look ashier on deeper tones. I know that many of my viewers don't appreciate those light pastel looking shades, and since I already went with Seafoam Green, I wanted to go a little bit deeper with this shade. Third row, first shade. This is the shade Get Naked. It is in place of the shade Lemoncello from Natasha Denona's Tropic palette. Also, if you have the Jubilee palette from the Boxycharm special, it's in there as well. So you could literally be buying this 3 times over if you bought this palette. Believe it or not, Lick It, Slam It, Suck It did not make it in it because it was too yellow, and I wanted a very soft yellow. Oh, look at that shine. It's a very beautiful duochrome, but it's very, very subtle and leans more towards a light pale yellow and not a, you know, bright sunshiny yellow, which is what the other Looxi Beauty shadow in my collection would have yielded. So I feel like it really fits the bill, and you guys will see here in just a moment. I'll give you guys comparison swatches for the 2 shades that I do own out of this palette, and you guys will see that they're very close in texture and tone, but the formula, you can tell, is very different. Oopsie. I decided to go with Colourpop's Mr. Salmon. I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here thumbing through my shadows, and so it's a duochrome, and it's soft and subtle, and I feel like it matches the tone of Natasha Denona's types of duochromes that she uses. So I think this is really fitting. It's a mauve pink with a purple duochrome shift over the top. The next shade is from Makeup Geek, Code Blue. That's going to be in place of that pastel blue shade in Natasha Denona's palette. Again, this is probably a little bit deeper in hue and saturation, but I really wanted to go a little bit deeper for those who have darker skin tones than mine. And then also I want to keep in mind that cream to powder formula generally swatches out a little bit darker than what it looks like in the pan. Okay, what would a dupe palette from me be if I didn't dip into one of my Coastal Scents shadows? This is Python Green. I chose it because I don't really have too many acid greens. I guess you could have went with one of the shades out of Glam Shop's mattes, but I'm not a huge Glam Shop matte fan, so I chose this. It's not really pastel, it's like an acid green, so it's more like a neon. Then lastly, Predictable by Sydney Grace is going to dupe that last shade in the palette, and it's, again, not really a pastel. This is more of a muted lavender mauve shade, and I really like it. I think it looks very beautiful, and it looks very fitting and matching to the palette. Again, kind of had to go up in hue and saturation for the palette just for the sake of those cream to powder formulas looking a little lighter in the pan. So here is the final swatches for this palette. And you can see in the palette there is not very much cohesion. Even gathering different brands, different formulas, different finishes, you can really see there's a huge disconnect on the shadows and trying to find a look from this color story. And those are the shades. We're just kind of getting up close here. Okay, those are the swatches from my dupe palette that I have for you guys. I'm a little rusty. I have to admit I'm a little rusty. I had them out here and I was thumbing around with them. I'm a little rusty. Haven't done a dupe palette, little dupe swatchy thing in a while, so I'm a little rusty. Apologize. And also, I don't have Natasha Denona's official swatches, and I only got a glimpse of the swatches. I didn't actually take a picture of the screenshot, and then the screenshots on Instagram were removed. Apparently it was leaked well in advance. So let's talk about what I think about the palette. I think Natasha Denona's team is very smart in knowing their audience. In this particular case, these midi palettes go over really well with the single shadow community, such as myself. I've purchased myself a number of Natasha Denona palettes. It is not by mistake that I purchased them. I purchased them because with the intent of using them as singles. I have these little 5 pans here. I really enjoy them, but I really enjoy them because I have the final say in what goes in my palette, right? So that's really key to being extremely appealing to somebody like me, who is both a single shadow lover, and I do find, I really do find some value in owning a complete cohesive palette as well. However, is this a complete cohesive story? No. What I think she's appealing to is the audience that likes single shadows and likes to take out those shadows. I just don't see how you can get a very cohesive look out of this palette. The other day, I tried to recreate I just tried to kind of go into, okay, so first off, let me back up here. I'm gonna go ahead and put this down at the bottom. I broke down the palette into 2 sections. I broke down the palette into neutrals, and then I broke down the palette and I shaded out all the neutrals and just left the colored tones. First of all, these colors are very well seen from a lot of the indie brands. Like Lethal's come out with some renditions of their shadows in a 12 pan. I know Ace Beauty has the Oceanic palette. Menagerie's put out a palette that has these types of tones to them, as well as a pastel palette in general they've put out. Makeup Geek has, the rainbow in pastels. I don't know if I hadn't already used these 2 right here are from the colored palette, these 2 right here, and then this one, I don't know if this is from the colors or if this is from the actual neutrals palette. I'd have to look. But that being said, they do have pastels. I don't know that if you owned those palettes, you would get the same feel, because Natasha Denona's formula doesn't really mimic Makeup Geek's. Makeup Geek is definitely drier, and Natasha Denona is much more emollient feeling on the eyes, and they just blend differently if you really want my opinion about things. But once I broke down the palettes into 2 separate color stories, I really started seeing that it's a neutral palette, and then you've got a couple of pops of blue and green here and there, and that's basically the story in a nutshell. Now, I think spending $65 on 15 eyeshadows with a 1.8 gram pan is a really, really good deal. You have a magnetic palette, you have the shadows, and you have a house for them, and they already come housed for you. So as far as if you don't already own these particular shades, it would be appealing to you. I think Natasha Denona is starting to see her community really like to take apart her palettes and piece them together how they want to use them, and that's what this palette's for. Because as far as making a good look out of this, I don't get much past like a neutral. I could buff a little of that Bellini in the crease, pick out this duochrome here and use it, and then maybe if I wanted to spice it up a little bit, I could use this in the inner corner slash, kind of just up there. Other than that, not really a color story. If you ask me, it's more of a single eyeshadow. Looks like my first Terra Moons order that I would ever put through. It looks like that's to me what it looks like. I just don't think that people would normally gravitate towards this kind of color story. Kind of goes back to my prediction. I'm going to go ahead and leave for you guys in the eye, but I gave some predictions as to what eyeshadow or what brands were going to start trending towards, and I really saw ugly beyond all reason color stories start to come out. Like this acid green, what do you use it with? Do you use it with this, you know, peach Bellini, and then what do you put over it? Because this shade doesn't really look good over it. These would overpower this green because this is a pastel acid green, I guess is what we're looking at. So I really just see these as a set of singles that you can use like with your bronze to kind of spice up the bronze palette, spice up your glam palette. Zendo doesn't need any more spice. In fact, they kind of, to me, they just left the chat with that palette. I don't think very many people gave that a very good rating or review. So why she came out with the pastel palette, I don't know. It's kind of beyond me. But that is my take on it. That's what I think. And you can see from the swatches, like it looks like a bunch of palettes that I picked out for a pan that eyeshadow. Even those who like to play the pan my eyeshadow, you know, or palette bingo, I've never seen such an incohesive color story in my life. I really haven't. And the fact that it's pastel, but the cream to powder formula makes me think that that's the reason why she thinks she can get away with this pastel color stories, because, well, these are cream to powder, but the cream to powders in Zendo didn't go over well, and neither did they in the Circo Loco. In fact, I got a lot of my friends who picked up the Circo Loco palette, they didn't really care for that blue cream to powder formula. So I'm really not sure that the community is going to take this and run with it. I think that, you know, it's going to be great for those who want to pick up a palette and add some more, you know, quote unquote singles to their collection that they can use. Like the Lauren May Beauties of this community, you know, Hannah Louise Poston, who like to take out and mix and match their own shadows. This is going to be perfect for you. It's not going to be perfect if you think you're going to pick this palette up and use it and make a really good look. That's easy. That is easy. I do want to give a few last, I just want to compare the Lemoncello and the Mint Frost to the two that I had in my dupe palette really quick. Okay, so here they are, and you can see that the Lemoncello, how do I get this on there so you can see it? It looks way more lemony in the pan than it does in my Looxi Beauty shadow. I can't turn my hand that way, it just doesn't go that way that well. There we go. So you can see in Looxi Beauty shadow that it looks so much more muted. But then when you actually go to the swatches, upon the first swatch you can see, oh, Lemoncello is so much more pigmented. It does really have that, you know, lemony yellow color to it. But then you blend it out because it is supposed to be used as a topper shade. Its formula is a shimmer. Oh, DC, it's actually supposed to be a duochrome. Sorry, excuse me, I retract that statement. It's supposed to be a duochrome. When you actually, you know, blend it out, which is how I really feel like you're going to see it on the eyes, it looks very similar to Naked from Looxi Beauty. So if you have Naked from Looxi Beauty, I feel like you have this. If you have Jubilee, you already own this shadow. Same way with this, this green. Again, with a lot of the shades that, well, maybe not this one so much. This one was more of just a, this is what I had. Oh wait, it's supposed to be up here. There, it's actually not that much different. It really looks quite similar on camera. In person, I do see the difference. This is a little bit more vibrant than this. I find that this one would be more useful than the one that Mint Frost is, just a shimmer. This is a very metallic formula. In terms of Natasha Denona's formula, Sydney Grace is probably among the closest in formulation, and believe it or not, when she has those duochromes, it's a very thin formula, and Looxi Beauty's actually comes the closest upon use, I would say. I don't know if, like, I haven't compared ingredient for ingredient to know whether or not they would be or not. So anyways, there you have it. If you're finding value in this content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. So what do you guys think Natasha Denona's motives behind releasing a color story that's really not cohesive to the average user is? Do you think that she meant to do this on purpose? Do you think that she's trying to dip into the single shadow community? Leave your comment down below and let me know what you think. I'm eager to know. And also, do you have the Tropic palette? Do you own the Jubilee palette from Boxycharm? If you do, let me know in the comments down below, because I like to know this stuff. But also, then you own 2 of the 15 shades and probably 2 of the most appealing of the 15 shades, as I feel like many of these other ones really play a very close similarity in formula. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching. Can't wait to see you guys in my next video. Bye!